I am way long overdue, but let's actually finally talk about what I read for the month of March. Welcome to this house of books. My name is Ashley, and I love to talk all things books. Yeah, it's the 8th as I'm filming this. Let me double check. Yeah, it's the 8th. Time just got away. I was ready to film this at the beginning of the month, and it didn't happen, and then we went out of town, and that just delayed it more. And so here we are on the 8th. But I wanted to get this out. First, I like for myself just to be able to, like, if I ever want to go back and be like, what did I read that? Have these monthly wrap-up videos. I want to talk about these books. Some were really fantastic, some not so fantastic. And I definitely hit a reading slump for March. And you will see that just overall. It was slumpy in the middle of the month, but I was able to change up some of my reading, push past it, and I am definitely not in a slump now, but I'm also picking books that I really want to read. I'm going to take a sip of coffee and then let's go over stats. I'm not going to go huge in depth because it is long overdue, so I will just pop them on the screen and we can just kind of quickly go through them. Have my handy dandy notebook. All right, so for March, I read 8 books, which is my lowest number so far. One of them was physical, 7 audios. We didn't finish any read-alouds, though technically one of them had started as a read-aloud, but we have switched, and so my 8th grader is just doing the books on his own now, and that's just kind of what is working. I had 2 DNFs. I will talk about those in a second. One is very sad. Total pages was 2,966, which is pretty on average with what I've been so far. My average rating was 4.2, so that is actually the highest rating that I have had. I hauled 7 books, and I actually don't have the number for my unhauled written down. I will put it up on the screen. I just didn't write it down after I filmed my March haul and unhaul video. I don't have it written down. Now, before we get into the books that I did finish, let's talk about my 2 DNFs. So I DNF'd The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. This is part of my self-destruct pile of books. I just couldn't get into it. I would love to read this kind of a perspective as an adult book. This is extremely like YA, almost kind of middle grade to YA. And at that point that I was trying to pick it up and read it, it was not cutting it for me. So unfortunately I DNF'd it. I did DNF it pretty early. I think I was on chapter 7, page 57. So kind of by 50 to 100 pages in, I know if I'm going to finish it or not. So sadly, it was a not. We got kids everywhere, so I'm here in the schoolroom, but I love this little setup here. But I don't have like anything behind me to put books. All right, my next DNF. I think it's a soft DNF for now. I have taken this whole series off of my Goodreads TBR, and I have pulled them off of my shelves, and I have just set them aside. I don't quite know what I'm going to do with them yet. I would kind of like to try it again. I don't know. I DNF'd Valor by John Gwynne, so this is book 2 in the Faithful and Fallen series, and I am so sad by this. It has all of the elements that I love. There are so many characters and they move around to all kinds of different places in this expansive world. I could not keep it straight. So I DNF'd it at page 219, chapter 36. So I'm over 200 pages into this book, and there was a battle happening, and I couldn't keep it straight. Of who's fighting who, are there like some changes in whose sides people are on? I couldn't do it. I was really, really lost. This is what put me into the slump, and So I knew I needed to set it down. But again, it has elements of books that I love. Maybe I will try it again. I might start from book 1 again and pick it up and see. Maybe going through and getting a really good base again would work. And I think that also I would need to just read them like back to back. And that's a lot of heavy books back to back. But also I feel like if I step out of this world for even a month, I'm not going to get back into it easily. So I'm really, really bummed about that. Sip of coffee and then talk about books that I did finish. Also, this adorable coffee mug that I think I got last year from a thrift store. First book that I finished in the month was The Legendary Inga by Kate Stradling. This is a Norse-inspired YA story, and it is. I will say that it was done really well. It's slightly cozy fantasy. I feel like it's a really good kind of introduction into fantasy. So you're following Ingrid, who is just trying to make it through life, and her parents have died, and she has a ton of younger siblings, and they have an awful landlord, and she's just walking through a forest one day and accidentally has to defend herself against a monster. At that point, the king adopts her as his son and heir. The story goes from there. I did enjoy it. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I just feel, lacked what it needed to be 4 stars or more, but it was still enjoyable and I appreciate it. I'm glad that I picked it up to read it because it had been on my shelves for a couple of years. And so I'm glad that I read it. Maybe we'll put them in there until they won't stay there anymore. We'll see. So the next book was for the buzzword, and it had to have thing in the title, and so I picked Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. I am so glad that I picked this up. It was a 5-star book. You're following a woman who has had it rough. She was kicked out of, I think it was boarding school. Yeah, boarding school. She was definitely the underdog, economically, everything. She had to really fight to get there. And her roommate was caught with drugs, but the blame went to the other girl. And so she has just kind of struggled through life. The roommate has gone on and married a senator. I don't think he is. He's something. He's something in politics. And so he has 2 children that are coming to live with them, and they literally catch on fire. So it's usually when they are upset and their mother has died, and so now this politician has to take responsibility for the children, but also they don't want the masses to know about these children. I thought it was very sweet, found family, this woman kind of coming to terms with herself and taking on the responsibility for these children. It was so great. I really, really enjoyed it, and definitely a favorite. This is kind of when the slump happened, and I DNF'd those 2 books, and it was not going well. So I knew that I needed to pick some books that would be good. And so I picked up Once Upon a River by Diane Sutterfield. It was phenomenal. I really, really enjoyed it. It is another 5-star book. So this, you're following maybe kind of 1800s and following different people who live along the River Thames. The river, at one point, 3 girls go missing into the river. Ooh, it got really bright and really dark. Come on. Sorry, the sun came out, so the lighting changed in here. So 3 girls have gone missing into the river. And with that, then one evening on a cold winter's night, there's a local tavern and a guy walks in carrying what they assume is a dead girl in his arms. He collapses. All of a sudden, the girl comes back to life, and so they have to figure out who she is and where does she belong. So you're following lots of different people, which was interesting because, at this point I was struggling through Valor, which has lots of different people, but this I just feel like was introduced in a much more manageable way. And I absolutely enjoyed it. I really liked following all these different characters. So it was a win for this month. Then for one of my book clubs, we read The Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. And this was another 5-star book. I really enjoyed this book. I don't know that everyone in my book club enjoyed it as much as I did, but I really liked it. So you are following a family of Indigenous workers who they're from Nova Scotia, but they go to Maine every summer to pick blueberries. There's one that's a family, and they have a young girl who all of a sudden goes missing, kind of like that, but in a totally different setting. She goes missing. So then what happens to the family? Then you are following a girl as she kind of grows up and becomes a young woman, with her relationship with her family, especially her mother and her aunt, and just kind of piecing some things together as the story goes. I really, really enjoyed this. I think that this author just came out with another book, and I would be really interested to pick that up also. So, another win. And then we kind of went downhill a little bit. So I picked up Scythe and Sparrow by Bryn Weaver. This is book 3 in the Ruinous Love trilogy. So I read book 1 last year, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. It was unlike a book that I have ever read before. Definitely read the trigger warnings. There are a lot. Towards the end of last year, though, I read book 2 and did not like it. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like their kind of setup and their love interest. Like, it just didn't work. I ended up giving it 2 stars. This one worked better. I still didn't love it. I am giving it 3 stars. So all of these books, you're following different brothers and kind of their stories and the female main character that comes into their lives, usually pretty unexpectedly. So this, you're following the youngest of the brothers, who is a doctor. So, he has this oath to, do no harm. But then this woman comes into his life. She's pretty mayhem and mixes up his life. Not necessarily for the better. He was trying to be this better person and not be stuck in the beginning of his life. And she comes in and was like, nope, let's cause chaos. It was okay. It wasn't great. I think that there's going to be a spin-off series from this one, and I don't think that I will continue on with it. I might keep the first one, but then the second and the third I am definitely getting rid of, which is unfortunate. I know other people have read these and enjoy them. Not for me. Except for the first one, which worked. It's getting a little precarious up there. Alright, and then the last 3 books I have talked about in my monthly reading vlog. That is linked down below if you want to go check that out. It was towards the end of the month. The slump in the middle of the month definitely slowed down my reading, and so I wanted to finish the month really strong. And so I had enough time that I wanted to read 3 books. I'm not going to go into huge detail of these books because I talked about them extensively in the reading vlog, but the first one was The Most Fun We Ever Had by Claire Lombardo. This was another self-destruct book, and it was great. I rated it 4 stars. You are following a family with 4 daughters as they grow up and also as they're adults, and just kind of their family drama. Really enjoyed it. It was good. And then for another book club book, we read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. 3 stars. And that's kind of generous. I liked the first 75% of it and did not like the last 25%. It went downhill and took a turn that I did not expect at all, and nowhere in any of the blurbs or anything was I expecting it to take that kind of a turn. 3 stars. And then my last book is one that could technically count as a read aloud, but we have switched it. I think just my son getting older, it's harder to sit down and do read alouds together. I asked a bunch of friends about that, and it's kind of the general consensus that yes, it gets harder. His curriculum for next year that will be coming up soon, it switches to that kind of setup too, that you could do them as read alouds, you can just assign them or buddy read them, anything like that. So we are just starting that a little early, but I finished Anne Frank. So he has since read a few more tabs of this. I started from where we had left off and just read through pretty quickly at the end of the month. 5 stars. I know a lot of people don't rate nonfiction. I do. And I'm really glad that we picked this up and he is still reading it and I have already finished. It was definitely fascinating reading from Anne's point of view as she's, 12, 13, 14-year-old girl and just all of her changes. I do know that I did not read this version in 5th grade. There have been multiple versions of this because Anne is really open with her sexuality, with her body, all of that. When this was first published, obviously that's not going to be put out there. But now they have this version that is almost the full diary. They do talk at the end how there were pages that were glued together, and those are not included in this because they figure Anne wanted people to read this diary, but since she had glued those pages together, she didn't want people to read that. It was really good though. It definitely sat with me for a while and I needed to sit there and just kind of sit in those feels, and especially now. Better View. Those are the 8 books that I read this month. Not my best reading month, but that will improve. I figure I started the year really, really strong, and there was going to be that time where it just wasn't working as well, but I have made changes and adjustments. I got over that slump, which is really good. As always, if you like this or anything else that I post here on this channel, make sure to like and subscribe down below, and I will be back for more soon.